The newcomers. The Krellick station shimmered in the black void like a floating jewel, massive, ancient, and bustling with species from over 100 worlds. It was where empires negotiated peace, smugglers traded contraband, and weary diplomats sought distractions between sessions of galactic posturing. And at the edge of the central ring, nestled between a Virexi nectar parlor and a Pulsari Grav cinema, sat the Rusty Nebula, the only human-run bar on the station. It smelled like smoke, sweat, and fermented engine oil, home. Behind the bar, Sergeant Mace Callahan, retired Earth Marine, wiped down a cracked counter. His cybernetic hand, old, matte gray military issue, hummed softly as it worked. He wore a loose synth cotton shirt over his broad shoulders and had the look of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to be obeyed. "Still smells like a warship's latrine in here," Mace grumbled. "It's an ambience," replied Juno Vega, young, bright-eyed, and fresh from Earth's diplomatic corps. She adjusted her translingual comms pin nervously as she looked around the dim room. "Ambience doesn't usually hiss at customers." Mace jerked a thumb toward a coiled stack of translucent limbs slumped in a corner booth. "Zlarians hiss when they're relaxed," Juno said. "They're actually complimenting your lighting." Mace grunted. "Huh. Could have fooled me." The place was unusually busy tonight. Word had spread that Commander Thrall of the Gorvok Enforcers, massive, tusked brutes known for brute force diplomacy, was coming to meet Ambassador HFYStories of the Virexi Hive, a silk-voiced insectoid diplomat who loved peace talks, tea, and odd Earth idioms. And Juno, ever eager to prove herself, had arranged for the meeting to happen here. "Humans run the place," she'd told the station's council proudly. "Neutral ground, good drinks, relaxed atmosphere." Now she was starting to sweat. Thrall entered like a collapsing sun, loud, armored, and radiating disdain. 2 Gorvok warriors flanked him, all horns and heavy breath. HFYStories followed moments later, gliding delicately across the floor like a living sculpture. The Virexi's chitin shimmered with diplomatic dye patterns indicating curious optimism. Juno met them halfway, smiling nervously. "Ambassador HFYStories. Commander Thrall. Thank you for..." Thrall growled, cutting her off. "This is your diplomacy nest? It stinks of ammonia and weak stomachs." Juno kept her tone polite. "It's a cultural space. The Rusty Nebula is a human social center." The commander turned to Mace behind the bar. "You run this den?" Mace gave a slow nod. "Yup. Drinks are strong, seats are clean, and the rules are simple. No weapons, no threats, no brawls unless I start it." Thrall let out a booming laugh. "The little ape has a spine." Mace looked him up and down. "You don't want to find out what else I've got." The room quieted. Ambassador HFYStories moved to ease the tension. "Commander, Earth's customs can be colorful. Their conflict resolution patterns vary widely." Thrall sneered. "Their pattern is soft. Their warriors write poetry and cry during mating ceremonies." Juno flinched, but Mace only smirked. "We cry when it's worth crying. And we fight when it's worth fighting." Thrall stepped forward, towering over the bar, close enough for Mace to smell burnt ozone on his breath. "Tell me, barman, have you ever fought anything bigger than a bottle?" Mace's cybernetic hand clicked once. "Once or twice," he said. "Last one had more teeth than you, but whined less." The bar chuckled, some nervously, some genuinely. Even the Zlarian let out a pleasant hiss. Thrall's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps I should test this so-called human resilience." Juno stepped between them. "Commander, we're here for diplomacy." Thrall shoved her aside, not hard, but enough to make her stumble. Silence fell. Mace's jaw tightened. He stepped out from behind the bar, slowly, deliberately. "You want to swing fists, Thrall," he said. "Do it. But you lay a hand on her again, and I'll teach you why humans were voted least likely to survive space, and did it anyway." Thrall laughed, tusks bared. Then he cracked his knuckles. And the room began to brace for the punch that would change everything. The incident. The moment Thrall's fist left his side, time seemed to bend. Juno barely had time to react. The Gorvok commander's punch, a massive, hammering strike meant to backhand her aside like a tossed rag, swept toward her head. It never landed. Mace Callahan was already in motion. The retired Marine stepped between them with unnerving speed for a man his size and age. His cybernetic arm whirred as it snapped forward and intercepted the blow. Metal met flesh with a crack like splitting wood. Thrall blinked in surprise as pain shot up his arm. Mace's grip tightened around his fist until bones popped audibly. The commander tried to yank free, but it was too late. Mace twisted, stepped in, and drove a short, brutal punch into Thrall's gut, right between the armored plates of his war harness. Thrall wheezed. The air went out of him like a depressurized hatch. Then Mace head-butt him, hard. The impact echoed through the bar. Blood and tusk fragments scattered across the floor as the Gorvok commander stumbled back, howling in rage. Gasps erupted from around the bar. Half a dozen species stared, stunned. Two of Thrall's warriors surged forward in fury. The bar fight began. A Varkari mercenary flipped a table. A flailing Zlarian slapped a drink out of someone's hand. One of the Gorvok lieutenants grabbed a stool and hurled it toward Mace. It missed and shattered a holoscreen on the wall, sending up sparks and static. Juno ducked under a table, cursing, while Kewes clicked his mandibles in alarm and retreated to the far wall. Mace didn't retreat. He advanced. His fighting style was ugly, efficient, and terrifyingly effective. He didn't just swing fists, he used elbows, knees, boots, bottles. He grabbed one Gorvok by the throat, slammed him into a table, and used the edge of the counter to break a tusk. Another swung a plasma baton. Mace sidestepped and jammed his cybernetic fist into the alien's kneecap with a sickening crunch. "Stop fighting!" Juno shouted, still crouched behind a pillar. "This is a diplomatic venue." No one listened. Alien patrons fled or joined the chaos. A Tralvaxian diplomat tried to record the scene before getting clocked by a flying glass. Ava ducked as a Virexi server cartwheeled past in panic. Above it all, Mace moved like a ghost with gravity. His calm never broke. His breathing stayed steady. He fought with the kind of cold experience that only came from battlefields soaked in fire and blood. And it terrified everyone who saw it. After 5 minutes of chaos, station security stormed in, for Centauri bots, floating in with stun rods humming and visors flashing. They shouted orders in 6 languages, firing non-lethal pulses at the most aggressive brawlers. Mace stood in the center of it all, bruised but steady, chest rising and falling like a war drum. Thrall lay against the wall, groaning. 2 of his warriors were unconscious. The others dragged themselves upright as security rounded everyone up. Juno stood, hair frazzled, dust on her jacket. She looked at Mace, stunned. You just broke protocol," he said, wiping blood from his nose. "Maybe." Security bots snapped metal restraints on his wrists. Mace didn't resist. He nodded at Juno. "Don't let them bury this under paperwork. You saw who threw the first punch." She nodded, speechless. As they dragged him out, the bartender caught one last glance from Kewes. The insectoid ambassador's many eyes blinked rapidly, studying him with unsettling curiosity. Hours later, in a holding cell, Mace sat on a bench, shirt torn and knuckles scraped. Across from him, a glowing monitor flickered on. Ambassador HFYStories appeared on screen. "Human Callahan," the ambassador said in his smooth, fluted voice, "I have reviewed the footage." Mace raised an eyebrow. "Good entertainment. Informative. You display a capacity for violence disproportionate to your size and physiology. Curious." Mace smirked. "You think that was impressive?" I held back. HFYStories clicked thoughtfully. "That is what concerns me." There was silence between them. Then, HFYStories leaned closer to the camera. "The others will rethink their assumptions," he said. "They must. For if even your elderly veterans possess such ferocity, then humanity is not weak." He ended the transmission. Mace leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes. One punch. One bar fight. And already the galaxy was watching. The reconsideration. The Krellick Station Tribunal Court wasn't a courtroom in the human sense. It was a high, circular chamber of polished obsidian and shifting light, designed to unsettle the accused and impress the audience. Dozens of species watched silently from their private galleries, eyes, lenses, or sensory stalks fixated on the proceedings below. At the center, Mace Callahan stood behind a low-energy containment field, arms crossed, face unreadable. He wore a clean shirt now, thanks to Juno, but the bruises on his jaw and the swelling on one knuckle still throbbed. Not that he'd admit it. To his right, Juno Vega stood on a raised platform reserved for advocates. She looked small but composed, voice amplified through the tribunal's trans-frequency harmonizer. "The evidence is clear," she said, gesturing to a holographic replay suspended in the air. "Commander Thrull struck first. My client responded with controlled force. He did not escalate. He contained the escalation." The footage played, Thrull's arm lunging toward her, Mace intercepting the blow, the swift takedown. The crowd murmured in dozens of dialects. Opposite her, a Gorvok representative growled. "Controlled force? That primitive broke 3 of our officers. One of them will require surgical tusk grafts." Juno didn't flinch. "Perhaps your officers should consider obeying the station's no-violence treaty." From the audience gallery, Ambassador HFYStories rose, his long limbs folding with grace. "Honored Tribunal," he began in a voice like wind chimes, "I would submit a formal statement." The tribunal's presiding AI nodded. "Permission granted." HFYStories turned, directing his words not to the council, but to the room at large. "Many of you saw the footage. You saw a human who did not draw a weapon, who did not kill, even when provoked. He fought as only a predator fights, with restraint." Mace raised an eyebrow at that. "Consider this," HFYStories continued. "The Gorvaks have long claimed martial superiority. Yet their commander was incapacitated in seconds by a lone human who had no armor, no backup, and no official mandate to act." He paused, letting the words sink in. "What does that say about humanity?" the ambassador asked. "That they are undisciplined, dangerous, perhaps, but also adaptable, fierce, loyal, and worth a second look." The chamber was still. The tribunal AI chimed. "Thank you, Ambassador. The statement is entered into consideration." Juno's lips curled into the faintest smile. After deliberation, the verdict came. Mace was found not guilty of initiating violence. However, he was fined for violating station decorum and banned from acting as security personnel on diplomatic floors for 1 cycle. He shrugged at that part. He never liked the diplomatic floors anyway. Later that evening, back at the Rusty Nebula, Mace sat at his old corner table, sipping a dark brew with a swollen hand wrapped in synth gauze. The place had been cleaned up, mostly. A few scorch marks still decorated the wall. The holoscreen now showed news feeds, some praising his actions, others condemning humanity's violent instincts. Juno slid into the seat across from him. "You're officially the most searched name on the interstellar net," she said. "Also, 3 alien podcasts are calling you the Gorilla of Sector 9. Mace grunted. "Better than Barkeep the Bone Breaker." "I kind of like that one," she said, grinning. He took a sip and set the glass down. "So, the council by your song and dance." Her face turned thoughtful. "I think they're adjusting. The Virexi have submitted a proposal to include humans in joint defense exercises. Even the Tralvaxians want a cultural exchange." He looked at her. "Because of one bar fight?" "Because of what it represents," she said. "You didn't just defend me. You exposed their blind spot." He raised a brow. "Humans don't scare them because they don't understand us. But now they wonder. And that's power." Mace leaned back in his chair. "Reminds me of an old Earth saying. Oh, speak softly and carry a big stick." She smirked. "You threw the stick at someone's head. Didn't say we had to hold it." They clinked glasses. Around them, aliens watched from a respectful distance. Not with contempt this time, but with curiosity. And maybe a little wariness. For the first time since humanity joined the galactic community, the others were no longer laughing. They were reconsidering. Ripples in the void. The bar was quieter now. The worst of the attention had passed, though the Rusty Nebula had become something of a legend overnight. There was even a crude drawing of Mace Callahan on the wall, half caricature, half shrine, etched by a passing Varkari artist. It showed him mid-punch, with the caption, Human, level uncertain. Mace hated it. Damn thing makes me look like I enjoy it, he grumbled, wiping down the counter. Juno, perched on a stool, smirked over her tablet. You did flatten a Gorvok war hero. Kind of hard to play humble after that. Mace snorted. Didn't flatten him. Just reminded him not to swing at women in my bar. Her smile faded, replaced by something more thoughtful. It went further than that, you know. I've been in the council chambers all week. The tones changed. Mace glanced up. Changed how? They're asking different questions. Before, it was all about Earth's emotional volatility, cultural primitiveness, military immaturity. She paused. Now they're wondering how many of you are like you. He raised an eyebrow. That's supposed to be a compliment? Juno tapped her comms pin. The Zlarian strategists requested a tactical simulation exchange. The Drexy War Conclave is reconsidering their opposition to human colonies in neutral zones. Mace let out a low whistle. All that because of a punch. She nodded slowly. A punch that told them we're not just soft-skinned diplomats or naive newcomers. It reminded them that humans survived our own world long before we reached the stars. That we still carry fire. Maybe, Mace said, they needed to see the teeth under the grin. Just then, the door hissed open with a soft pneumatic hiss. A group entered, 3 individuals wearing the sleek, iridescent robes of the Tsar Dominion. The Tsar were notoriously reclusive and deeply suspicious of species with chaotic social patterns. They had never set foot in the rusty nebula. Until now. They moved carefully, eyes scanning the space. One of them, tall and swan-necked, approached the bar. You are Mace Callahan, it said in melodic, clicking tones, translated by a hovering auto-interpreter. Mace set down his rag and nodded. That's me. We seek understanding, the Tsar said. Your actions demonstrated controlled aggression in a context we had not statistically predicted. The Dominion would value further insight into your behavioral parameters. Juno blinked. Did you just say they want to study you? The Tsar inclined its head. And to open cultural dialogue. Your species has proven unexpectedly complex. Mace chuckled dryly. You picked a hell of a way to say you were wrong about us. The Tsar actually bowed. We will return with a diplomatic envoy. As they turned and left, Juno whistled softly. That's 2 major powers in a week. Mace poured himself a drink. That makes them curious. Not friendly. Curiosity's a start. He nodded. Curiosity's how doors open. But doors don't stay open unless you keep 'em propped. Juno leaned forward. I've been thinking. The councils offered Earth a chance to head up a mixed-species relations unit. They want a symbol of humanity's evolving galactic posture. He looked at her warily. And you want me to be that symbol? Not exactly. But they want a place where species can drop the formalities. Sit down. Talk. Learn. Fight a little, maybe, but on their own terms. They want to expand this. She gestured around the bar. He followed her gaze. Alien patrons chatting in broken English, someone trying to play darts with tentacles, an old Varexi sipping a rusty rocket and humming off-key. Make 100 rusty nebulas, she said. Spread them across the stars. And let humans run them. Mace considered that. He looked down at the drink in his hand, then out at the mismatched crowd. He thought of the punch that had started it all, and the stares that followed not with fear, but with respect. Can I still throw people out if they get mouthy? Juno grinned. I think that's part of the appeal. Mace raised his glass. Then maybe humanity's got a place out here after all. They clinked glasses. And somewhere, far beyond the orbit of Krellick Station, a report traveled through subspace, a minor diplomatic incident, a human bar, a moment of unplanned violence. But in the margins of the file, a quiet note had been added. Species. Human. Recommendation. Reassessment required. Potential underestimated.